What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit, and I'm super pumped up. Me and Darin Ureche have been sitting here just jamming, and I've got a chance to get to know Darin over the last couple of months, and the really amazing project in service that he's about to launch that really encompasses his career. And you guys know what I mean when I talk about difference maker and how difference makers are people that have experienced something in their life. They were maybe stuck where you're stuck right now and they figured it out. They came across a system or a way of empowering other people. So they fixed themselves, they became successful, and then they helped other people. And that is exactly what Darin's doing. And so I'm super excited to have this conversation. Like I said, we've been sitting here just jamming and hoping, wishing the camera would have been on. So Darin, man, welcome to the studio.
Thanks.
My pleasure, man. And again, I sit and I think about, and you were just sharing a really cool story with me about someone that was talking kind of crap about you at an award show. Can you tell me that for a minute?
Yeah, so I was at an awards banquet, and the gentleman sitting next to me was kind of upset because one of the awards I was getting at Remax at the time was kind of a recognized achievement. And so I think it was the award I was getting is 1.5 times with the one he was getting. And we was in a group of people, and he said, I just don't understand why you're getting this award. I work just as hard. I'm just as good looking. Everything he was comparing. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hear you on the phone. I see the way you handle yourself. And my follow-up systems are a little tighter. My conversations are a little bit different. They're more tailored. I'm careful what I'm saying around people. I'm careful about the trail I'm leaving behind, what people say about me behind my back. So, I was thinking about all these things of why that maybe I did, 20 deals more, 30 deals more than you, is because of I'm more conscious of the behaviors and habits and systems that I have in place and habits I've developed that are different than yours.
It's so cool because it's the inches. It's the inches all around us.
Yes.
And someone looking, he didn't see the difference. He saw that he was working, you were working. You were making calls, he was making calls. He's not looking at the little tiny differences that are going around, and those differences make miles at the end. They compound.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about it in like darts, right? So you walk up, you grab a dart, and you just recklessly throw it at the dartboard, right?
Yeah.
And then you got a guy that just takes a minute, is a little more careful, and both maybe walk up to a dartboard that you've never thrown darts before, but one person just kind of throws it at the bullseye, and the other one is like concentrating, focusing, and kind of blocking things out just for a second. And that's kind of the way I look at it sometimes. My analogies sometimes, I guess.
Yeah.
How you
No, that's good. I love analogies. And I wanted to start off with that purposely to lead in with people where you got in your career. But I think it would be awesome to start off and go way back to, wanting to do real estate and how was that welcomed in your family, kind of thing.
Yeah. So when I was coming out of high school, all my family, the neighborhood I grew up in was a GM town. And, for everybody's parents, they knew what time they went to work. They knew what time they got out. They knew what day they got their paycheck, and they knew how much it was. And when I mentioned about entrepreneurship, getting into real estate, I had every family member against me. And I was so excited to talk about getting into real estate, not realizing that it was going to backfire on me and that nobody supported me. So it took me a few years to finally step forward and do what I wanted to do and just kind of step away from my family a little bit, and they were kind of upset at me. So fast forward is I got my real estate license, and my intention was to get into commercial real estate. And I researched a company that had a little bit of commercial real estate that they were doing. So I went to the first meeting, and I stepped out of it when the meeting was over. I stepped out in sheer panic. I was completely panicked, thinking to myself, this is what my family was talking about. And I just I just had the butterflies in my stomach just turn and said, I'm in now. I can't turn around. I got to figure this out. So I have got to to get serious and figure this out because of the buzz, the conversations around the office, just talking to people. I could feel the instability in the air, right? I could feel it in the air that it wasn't the environment that I came from. It was a different environment. It was an entrepreneur environment because all real estate agents are pretty much entrepreneurs. You never know where your next paycheck's coming from. And so I panicked, and from there, I got serious about figuring it out. And I was lucky enough to get on a team with a high producing real estate agent that sent me all around the country with the top speakers at the time, with top producing realtors all across the country, and just pulling pieces here and there, learning how to know where your next paycheck's coming from. And for me, it was creating stability and know where my next paycheck's coming from. So that's how the consistent agent TCA was born.
It's so cool because a lot of times, when you think, oh, I'm going to get into real estate. I know a bunch of people. This is going to be great. I can make a lot of money, that kind of thing. And people don't really think about that entrepreneur side and all the things that now all of a sudden you're selling, you're marketing, you're doing all the things to make your business work. And if you don't sell anything today, you're not making any money.
Right. The failure rate in businesses, entrepreneurship is extremely high.
Hmm.
And the failure rate in real estate is extremely high. I mean, over the years, I've seen people come in and get out. The turnover is high. Um, so for me. I was lucky because I was consistently like in the top 30 year after year for 30 years straight. So I didn't have big spikes where I went up, and so a lot of agents would have a banger year. For whatever happened, maybe they had a string of deals and then they'd fall back down again.
Yep.
So I seen the spike. So, I'd always pay attention. I was like, oh, this person had a banger year, but then boom, they fall back down. And my career was steady, straight across the board. I didn't have the highs and I didn't have the lows.
Yep.
So I just learned how to stay consistent. And there was, that a lot that went into it. So
So going back and you found yourself on the right team and you found, a situation where you can get mentored and really learn and develop, which I think is absolutely huge. Not a lot of people not everyone is blessed with those opportunities, even getting into sales, let alone in a situation like an entrepreneurship where you're kind of out on your own in a lot of cases. When you were going through and learning some of the stuff, did you just take it right away, or did it, some of the stuff that you're now showing people how to be more consistent? Was it something that you were like, yeah, I'm going to take this and run with it, or did you have a little bit of resistance to it?
It didn't happen overnight, but it happened fairly quickly because I was so driven to not let my family see any cracks of struggle
Yeah.
or, not, not being able to pay bills. I was aggressively learning, and I was a sponge for knowledge. Back then they had cassette tapes, and so, and VHS tapes
Yep.
back in the early 90s. And so everything I could get my hands on. So I would go into the library at the company that I was at, and I would check out tapes, take them back the next day. I was at the bookstore. I would literally sit in the bookstore for hours because I didn't have the money to buy books. So I would sit there and just skim book after book.
Oh.
And sales and psychology is where I put all my effort because early on, you were taught all these sales techniques. If they say this, you do that. If they, objection handling and all that. And it just wasn't for me because I always felt like sales was kind of like trickery so I just thought, you know what? I just want to learn sales and psychology. And that's where I put my focus on. And, that's how I guess I learned different habits and structures looking back. So in the beginning, I struggled to develop systems that would create an environment to where I knew where my next paycheck was coming from. So to fast forward to 30 some years, I look back and now I'm like, okay, I can put a label on what I did here. I put a label on what I did there. So I learned all these things that was actually a system But during my career, I didn't realize it was a system.
Yes. Yeah, when you're in it and you're going through it, you're not realizing what you're doing.
Right.
I had a really awesome mentor that changed my life, and one of the things he said to me was like, the best part about getting older is I can still remember me when I was younger and these mistakes or these things that I'm doing, and now I have the wisdom to see what I was doing, and it
Right.
reminds me exactly of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you pick up things along the way. And I'll give you one example is that I went on an appointment and I'm young. I got my suit and tie on, I got my briefcase, you know, and I go in and I'm just full of enthusiasm, but lacking a lot of sales knowledge. So I go in and I introduce myself and I go through the house and I'm ready to list this house. And the guy kind of chuckled and laughed at me and he said, "Listen, I'm not gonna list my house with you today, but you're gonna learn something before you walk out of here today." And he says, "I'm gonna teach you how to wedge," because he was selling his house because he was a retired sales coach. And this guy spent almost an hour with me and talking to me and teaching me about the he called it the wedge, right?
Yeah.
And so he spent some time with me and had a good conversation. But as a young kid, I walked out of the house. I'm like, what does he know? you know,
Yeah.
I just wanted to list the house. And so it wasn't until a few years later that I was helping a client because of a repair or something. I was making calls and trying to help this client do these repairs. And all of a sudden the light bulb went on and said,
There it is.
that's what that guy was talking about. And I leaned into that hard. And then I really understood. Because it was always rumbling in the back of my mind, what the hell was he talking about? Because sometimes when you're younger and lack experience, you can't stitch things together. So it takes experiences and wisdom sometimes to stitch somebody else's knowledge together that clicks. So you can learn all you want sometimes, and it's important to learn, but sometimes it takes a moment to where the light bulb goes on where you start stitching things together. But
Yep.
you have to put in the time, even though sometimes in a sales and entrepreneur environment, you're not, those things are not registering right at the moment, but you have to understand that you have to give it time for those things to connect. And you just got to wake up and just keep going at it every day and learning all you can, be a sponge for knowledge because things will connect.
I love it. We have a lot of similarities, and I focused a lot on sales and psychology and just learning people. And I'm excited to dive into more and talk about that a little bit at some point. But there, the big thing is like going through and like learning those things and then putting them into action and realizing what works and like being a person of like self-development and reading a lot of books or listening to a lot of the tapes. I had the cassette tapes that I'd put in my tape player, and then
Mm-hmm.
at one point they turned it into CDs, so I always had the rolling university kind of thing. But sometimes until you've experienced something, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
In my early 20s, there was a lot of things I'd listened to and it didn't really make sense, like the hedging, or the wedging that you were talking about.
Right.
And I'm curious to know what this is too. This sounds exciting. But then all of a sudden you experience it, and all of a sudden it comes back and it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. I can expand on wedging a little bit more if you want. What I took from it. So I think that the gentleman that spent the time with me teaching me this, I think it's in line with what he was trying to tell me is, for instance, is when you meet with somebody, you're kind of already doing things for them that are important to where they can't really make a decision on somebody else, like in real estate, right, for a
Yeah.
listing. So they can't really make a decision to commit with somebody else because you are over here already doing work that has to be done. And like in real estate, I can give you some examples. Like if it's an estate sale, we order pre-title to see what it looks like because it could have to go to probate. There, something could show up. The house could need some sort of repairs where you got a handyman coming in to take a look at it and get estimates done. Just whatever it is to create something that already has value for people before they ever even sign with you. So you're doing things of value for somebody before they even commit to you. So it kind of goes like, going the extra mile for
Yep.
people.
Yep.
I'm really big on going the extra mile for people because You can't expect somebody that doesn't know you to do business with you, but you can demonstrate what you're
Your value
made
is.
of,
Yeah.
your value, before they even hire you because you're already doing stuff for them before they even hire you. So I guess that's the wedge.
I love it. That's awesome. That is fantastic. I was curious when you brought it up the first time. I didn't ask, and so it was perfect to save it to here. That is excellent. You're getting sticky. You're proving yourself.
Hmm.
You're giving them an opportunity to know, like, and trust you at that point.
Yeah. So I'm always in every sales situation now, I'm always looking for that wedge. I'm always looking for, it's not necessarily, okay, I want to do this so this person absolutely does business with me. No, that's not it. I'm looking for things that I can do for people regardless of the outcome. So let's just say I put a lot of time, effort, even money into somebody and they don't do business with me. My feelings are not hurt
Yep.
at all. Good for them.
Yep.
Can I help the guy that give this information to the gentleman that you're doing business with, because it always comes full circle. It does.
I've built my whole sales career on believing just you go do good things for people
Hmm.
because it will pay back. And it's not I'm knocking on your door now, dear. And remember that thing I did for you. It's now time to pay
Yeah.
back, buddy. It just, you go and you do good things for people. And in the act of that wedge or whatever you
Right.
want to term it, when you're going out there and you're doing those things and you're adding value to people's lives just based off your experiences and your value, it's going to pay back. Whether they do business with you, they tell a friend, or other people just see it
Hmm.
and come to you.
Yep. So I was thinking earlier today on the way here actually is flipping the script. So what I mean is that early on in my career, I'm glad this happened early on in my career. And when even the wedge guy, right? So when I met with him, as a younger kid, all I cared about was if he did business with me or whatever it took to get the business, I didn't care, right?
Yep.
When I talk about flipping the script is this was the aha moment when my business really became consistent, when it really started growing, is I started showing up of what can I do for this person? What can I do to bring value? What questions can I ask to learn their situation? And then as I got older and wiser, that learning how to problem solve for people, because people are silently begging to be led. Okay, they're not going to say this to you, but when you walk in the door and you start asking questions, and when I did house rescues, I literally would have a situation where people just turn the keys over because they just want to be led. And I understood this early on, but you have to um, cherish that and you have to really honor that, because when you are when I say that people silently want to be silently begging to be led, when you're going to lead somebody, you have to be an adult about the situation and you have to lead with their interests first, not yours. And you have to lead with integrity. And when you can lead with integrity and put yourself out of it and put their needs first, that the paycheck will always show up.
It's so true. It's like, this is so awesome. I'm loving this stuff, and I can understand why you built a career being a difference maker.
Yeah. So and my mentor that when I started off is he always preached to me that always have a question-based presentation, right? People don't care what you know. They don't. You could be the smartest guy in the room. People don't care,
Yep.
but they do care when you take interest in them. So that's when I call flipping the script. That's what I did. And when I walk through somebody's door in a business setting, in a presentation where there's business on the line, I take myself out of it. I put that person first. And it's not, it's truly putting them first, right? To where in some situations I'm putting myself out. I'm putting myself out time, money, I mean, whatever it is, I'm putting myself out working in blind faith. And do they all work out? No. No, they don't. And that's what you have to, I think, to have a successful career in sales, you have to be willing to put yourself out. And if it doesn't work out, you put a smile on your face and you move on,
Yep.
because it will work out.
You're going to win more than you lose in that situation.
Yes. Yeah.
And yet we spend some more time being afraid of the ones that we lose. But
Yes. When you take, and I'm glad I learned this early on, but when you take a selfish approach, it's makes life harder because we're in a world that you know, it's a it's tough. It's a tough world for everybody. Everybody's in this world trying to survive. And when somebody can put somebody else first, that you will stand out. So like for me, and I've had clients feedback from clients that the reason why they refer me, the reason why they come back to me is because they always felt that I put them first, regardless, and that I always had their interest very first with no BS. With not, it's not fake, it's genuine, it's authentic, and it truly has been. So
It's amazing. And, I told you earlier when we were talking, I constantly think about when we were talking, you were talking about an agent that was in the same office as you. And he was like kind of walking through, like, I just don't get it. And like,
right,
I don't
yeah.
get why you're successful.
Yeah.
And
So I'm walking down the hall one day, and in the real estate industry, and not so much today, but it was all suit and tie, and I just refused to be in a suit and tie. And the joke was that I wasn't a suit and tie. I always say I'm too busy to pick out my suit and tie. I just throw on a set of jeans and go to work, right? So I'm walking down the hall, and I hear this voice behind me, and it was the broker owner of the big real estate company. I mean, a lot of agents in there, and I'm always coming at the top. I mean, like, but who cares? But he said, "I just don't get it. I just don't get it." And I heard it, that coming from behind me. So I turn around, and he looks at me and goes, "I just don't get it." I'm like, "You don't get what?" He goes, You come in here in your pajamas, exaggerating, but you're always in the top, and I just don't get it. Because, see, the thing is, that's somebody that's older that hasn't flipped the script yet.
yes.
Because he's all about the image and, look at me and, I'm dressed up real nice. But, underneath the hood, he only cares about himself. So, you know,
It's so cool when you can be successful being yourself.
hmm
You can show up and it doesn't because you can put on the suit, but if that's not how you're comfortable and how
right.
you show up, like you're now just doing this to be like everybody else.
Yeah. So I am, I'm all for dressing
Yeah.
properly, right?
Yeah.
Not a slob. But I just got to the point where I just got sick of suit and ties. And, back in my earlier career, it was just unheard of to go to an appointment in blue jeans. And I remember my first appointment showing up in blue jeans, and I was nervous because I just didn't want to put on a suit and tie. I just didn't. And then, so it was kind of expected back then too. So I did show up, and the first comment was, "Oh, we're a little casual today." And I thought, "Oh, here we go. I'm not going to get the business." But one thing I noticed is 5 minutes into the conversation, it went away.
Yeah.
They were more interested in what I had to say, my structure of helping them get the results they wanted, than a pair of blue jeans.
Yep.
It was way more important what I truly had to say, ask, learn about them than a pair of blue jeans.
Yep.
And it just went away. And then I never put on a suit and tie after that.
I love it. We have to overcome those things, like my wife sold Harleys in a male dominated industry, obviously. And I'd come and drop lunch off to her here and there. And I'd always love going in because it'd be these big burly guys who'd come in and they'd look at this little like 5'1" girl and like kind of like shoo her off. And then she's like asking them questions that are deep knowledge stuff that only people that know things are asking. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then following up with like this knowledge, and I'm watching them like the ice break and just see her as a badass. It's like
Right.
so cool. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how you're showing up. Again, people don't care what you know or what you say or how smart you are. And all they care about is how much you care about them.
That's all they care about. People are, by nature, only care about themselves, by nature.
Yeah.
And when you can put people first, you're a standout. Because in the world we live in today, people just don't. They step all of each other. They honk at you if you turn too soon. I mean, it's just we live in a kind of a mean world.
Yes.
And when you truly care about somebody that you don't know or haven't met before, about what's going to happen to them over the course of you doing business with me, it's just rare. And
I always tell this story of a few years ago, I was doing a podcast, going out to do a podcast with my friend Stacy, and we met up, and she's like, "I'm so excited! It's the first time I've been able to get out of the house in a while." Her mom had dementia, or either her or her dad had to be at home at all times because she'd get out of the house and get lost and that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, what happened today? Like, why are you able to come out? And she was like, we got this caregiver that came in the house, and we stayed there for a couple weeks just to make sure mom got acclimated, because she forgets who we are a lot of times. We didn't want her to freak out in the middle of the day, and I'm in the middle of work, and I've got to drop everything to go back home. And so I'm like, so how did you know today's the day? Like, today's the day you can go out. You feel free. You feel like you can do this, and you're not going to get called. And she's like, Jason, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She's like, this lady comes in, and her only commitment is to my mom. She's not thinking about what she has to do afterward. She's not checking her phone. She's not like watching TV. She's engaged with my mom. She's asking her questions. She's letting her talk. She's listening to her story. She's laughing at her jokes. They're reading the Bible together. They're doing these things. And she's like, every day she shows up. My mom doesn't know who she is, but she cries tears of joy. She just knows she's so happy and excited to see her.
Mm-hmm.
And that it really reminded me, and like how I built my sales career was that around that whole entire basis is like, if you can really see people, you
Mm-hmm.
can really be curious, and you can really like ask them questions and really get to know them. There are people in their lives that are close to them. Their spouses that don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Stacy said afterwards, she's like, I've got to admit, she's like, I've got all these things going on. I'm running a business. I've got, my friends messaging me. All these things are happening. And I've heard my mom's stories over and over again. So she's like, I'm all this stuff. She's like, I'm not there present with my mom like this lady is.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think about it. But if you think about it, none of us are as present as what other people would want us to be. It may not, like, if somebody's listening, I want to tell this story to emphasize it, because if somebody's listening, they may think this is just not that big of a deal, but it is the biggest deal.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. And just it's sometimes it's the smallest things too. Like, I'll give you an example. Last night, these people wrote an offer on a house, and they're really stressed about it. And so I woke up this morning thinking, these people probably are faced with a lot of upset in their life by having to sell their house, move, all this to get resituated into a better situation with the house. So I sent them a text this morning. I created a group text and just said, listen, I got confirmation the offer's in. Sit tight. I got your back. I'm going to do everything I can to get this done. So sometimes it's just the little things that like afterwards, a little bit of follow up too, because I always had this policy that I never want people to go to bed worrying about their transaction. So it can be 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and maybe silence, right? So silence is the worst thing. Silence is kind of the fertilizer and the seed for stress. It is the worst thing, and a lot, not just real estate, but a lot of things. So I always made it a policy to put people at ease. So if they're going to bed and I know they haven't heard from me today, and we're in the middle of a transaction or whatever, that I make sure that I reach out to them so they can sleep. So when the husband and wife are together, say, "Oh, I talked to Darrin," or now with technology with group texting, "Yeah, Darrin texts us that. You know what? He's got it. Don't worry." They can relax, right? So I think that's important, and that is all these little pieces to be a consistent real estate agent, to know where your next paycheck is coming from, to know that you have little soldiers out there that are referring you, because that's what a lot of businesses are, not just real estate, but we live in a referral world. And if you want to get referrals, you got to take care of people, and you have to be aware of people's stress levels.
It's so easy for us as professionals to not think about those little things because we just know it. We
Mm-hmm.
go through it every day and
Right.
we forget. They want to be led. People want to be led because they want to
Yes.
be led because they don't know what you know.
Right.
They want you as the expert to take care of them.
Yeah.
And when you think of those little things that could be keeping them up at night, or
Yeah.
thinking that there are these things that could, that is such a phenomenal example.
Yeah. And another thing too, to be a consistent real estate agent is realtors have a tendency to always want to be nice to people and not ripple the waters. And if you want to be able to lead, and if you want consistency in your business, is you got to speak up too, because a lot of times clients, sellers, buyers will push back on you. And when you know your business well and you know the facts, you can push back. It's okay. You can create tensions if you have to. And, you know, sometimes realtors being on the other side of a transaction. Well, I don't want to go back with my client with that, or I don't want to say that, they're going to get mad. Well, of course, everybody's mad all the time. It's okay. I just did a transaction, and it was tense because they were selling their house, the stress was running high. I understood this. In the back of their mind, they knew that I had their back. So that's the other thing too, is when people know that you have their back, and then you're heading into a stressful situation where it's maybe not so friendly. So, all right, so I built the foundation. These people know I have their back.
Yep.
And then we got into a little bit of head bumping where it wasn't so pleasant. And I just said, look, you are not my friend. I'm not saying we're not friends, but we have a business situation that we have to deal with to get the results that you want. And I'm not here to make friends with you right now. I'm here to get you where you want to be. And sometimes it's not the words coming out of my mouth that you want to hear, but it's the facts, it's the truth, and it's what's best for you. And, they both took a deep breath and sat back. And it was still intense. But then when I was leaving, he was like, "We understand, Darrin. We understand. We understand. And you know what? Thank you." And that's by speaking up.
This stuff is so huge, but it's not easy.
It's not.
It's not easy. And I want to say it's not easy not to do what you did. Once you do it, I feel like it's easy. And especially as you realize that situations are never as bad as you built them up in your head. And you talk about that silence. And when you're building that up in your head about this conversation you have to have, it's making it way worse. And you're thinking of all these negative outcomes. And every time I've ever done that, when I've had the actual conversation, it's never been as bad as what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
However, like again, when you can get to doing those things, like it's very hard to go out and do it first. And I want to emphasize that because we're going to get to like how you're helping people get through these barriers. Because if they're listening right now, they're like, this sounds awesome. But then as soon as I go and have that conversation, I fold like a cheap tissue. Like
Right.
it's like I just,
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So I think it's important that when you truly have somebody's back, they know it. You
Yeah.
can't fake it. When you truly have somebody's back, right? But you have to establish yourself up front with integrity, because those situations are going to come. And when they come, they're going to be tough situations, but they're not going to fire you or walk away from you because they won't take the chance on going somewhere else when they know you have your back.
Yep.
People understand that things ain't going to always go smooth, and you don't know who you're dealing with. And this is something that I've learned along the way, is sometimes when you're in a transaction, time is of the essence. In a real estate transaction, they could have had a bad day at work. They could have had the kids screaming. You don't know what's going on. So their stress and the intensity may come out on you, but you have to stay laser focused on what's important for them, regardless if they're barking like a dog. It doesn't matter. You just have to get through it. And you can't take it personal. You can't get emotional over it. My grandmother once told me, she said that when you love your child, and you love your child to the end of the earth, you can discipline the heck out of them. Because you love your child, you can discipline them. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a good analogy, but I think when you work from a good space with integrity, leading people in the right way, having the knowledge to lead them in the right way, because so you can think you're leading the people in the right way, but if you don't have the right knowledge, you want to make sure that you're steering them in the wrong way. That's where experience and knowledge comes in. So you always have to lean on your broker, peers, or whoever to make sure that you're leading the people the right way. And I think when you're leading people the right way, that you can be bold. You can just tell people what to do. Again, people silently want to be led. I remember calling up clients in the past. I remember I had a tough one that was backed up to the expressway. I couldn't get it sold for over a year because their house is literally almost sitting on the expressway. And they were trying to get the same value of houses inside. Well, we got a really strong offer from somebody that was used to living on the expressway in the city. So they liked the highway noise.
Okay.
This is their one-time chance. So I remember calling the client up and just saying, I'm sending an offer over. We're signing it right now. I'm setting it up for signatures, and we got to sign this thing right now. Like, hold on, Darrin, but what's the amount? I said, it's good. Just sign it. And they're like, okay, we're trusting you. And, it was a good offer. It wasn't what they were listed at. And he called me back and he says, "You're right. We're got to sign this." I said, "Yes, please sign it and get it over right away." So sometimes you just have to take charge and tell your client what to do. That comes with experience too. So, if you're new and green, you got to be careful with that. But to be consistent in the real estate business as you grow, you have to be in control.
Is huge. And I talk a lot on here what it means to be kind, because a lot of people think being kind is like smiling and making people
Right.
feel good. What's being kind is telling somebody a brutal truth, because if you don't tell
Yes.
somebody they need to take this, then they don't get that offer, and then they have to take at some point an offer that's lower than that, or never sell the house.
Right.
And so sometimes you need to tell people the brutal truth, and they might be upset with you, but then they get past it and they see that you truly had their back.
Yeah, and I think that when you always got to be thinking, and you because every client is different, every person is different. And so if you do have a situation, I think to stay consistent in the business, to always know where your next paycheck's come to get referrals is, let's just say the tensions are running high in a conversation. Then you leave, send a follow-up text and just say, "Listen, I know it was a brutal conversation. I know this made you uncomfortable, but listen, I've got your back on this. I'm going to do everything to make sure you get where you want to go. And I just apologize for how brutal it is, or whatever the situation is, but you can do a follow-up. And sometimes without that follow-up, it goes back to when I was talking about people going to bed with stress or unknown. So if you leave and it's still high, the attentions are still high or the stress is high, you can bring it down through a text message, through an email. You don't have to call them. You don't have to try to say, "Oh, I'm sorry." You don't need to apologize for nothing. Just send a quick text. "Hey, I got your back. Be at ease." And you know what? It calms. And then, you know what? Who are they going to refer? Who are they ever going to take a chance on doing business with again? And that's what builds consistency, is by having people's backs, and don't let them stress out, and do the best you can to calm them.
You are the full definition of a difference maker. That's what I talk about. Like, you're literally making a difference, and it has so many different looks to it, because the other piece is you're just thinking from this real estate transaction, in getting referrals that way. You're probably one of the most reliable people that they have in their life, period,
Right.
across several different industries. And you look at sales in general, in the industries that I was in, it was like people would come to me and tell me their life stories. They would come to me for therapy almost. And I'm like, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
But it's because, like, you quickly, when you do these things, you become a reliable, trusted person in their life.
Right. Yeah. Because it's just so lacking, even family members and everything, that, if you can become a staple in their life, that's where you build a base from. And for me, in my career, was I always wanted to know where my next paycheck was coming from. I wanted people to refer me. And I thought to myself, the only way people are going to refer you or ever recommend you is you've got to be a solid person. You have to have integrity. You have to get results, right? I'm big on results. So I always so one thing we call it, and it's become a joke inside my office, is we call it the Darrin spin. So we just let a transaction, go its normal course, right? Then if we come into a problem on an inspection or appraisal, or the contract gets stuck, the joke will be, it's time to put the Darren spin on it. And so the Darren spin, really what it is kind of just pulling back for a minute, looking at every party involved. If in a real estate transaction, sometimes the buyer or seller is with another agent. So either working through that agent, finding out what's important for that side of the transaction, finding out what's important for your sellers, looking at everything that's going on, look at all parties involved and finding out where the issue is, and then just diving in and resolving that issue, maybe by thinking outside the box, and depending on what it is, but maybe doing the things that other people won't do to resolve the transaction and get it moving forward. I've gone to so many closings that my staff or other people have said, "There's just no way that shouldn't have went to closing," but it's thinking outside the box and problem solving. is to, again, another piece to being consistent in the real estate business, to always know where your next paycheck's coming from.
I love it because we've addressed two major things. People think when they think sales and successful salespeople, I think most people think the fast talker, the one that the guy, the slickest, person, the person that like ever has all the charisma and all that kind of stuff. And what it really, we've really hit two things or a couple, three things, really: caring for other people, wanting to serve other people, listening, asking questions and listening. That is like, that's the number one thing. 97% of sales, if people are asking questions, they're asking close-ended yes/no questions. They're not getting deep and really getting to know
Right.
people.
Yeah, that's what when I first got into real estate, the first thing they teach you is all this objection handling and sales. And
Yeah.
so I remember going to my first couple of appointments, I thought, this is stupid. This is really stupid. I just want to solve problems and help people.
In solving problems. That was the other one I was going to say. Yep.
Yeah, solving problems and helping people. Is that sales? I don't know. Is it defined as sales? I said, I'll never be a salesperson. And I always, now that I've been in, I'm 35 years into this and over 1,500 homes sold, and I've always been a single agent, I never had a team or anything like that. And I thought to myself, I've never really sold a home. I've never, I've never really asked anybody to sign a contract to say, oh, sign here. I don't think I've ever one time in my career asked somebody to buy a house, ask them to sign a contract, or did that trickery to sign, oh, sign here, all this fancy. No, you just create a situation to where if it all works out and you did your job and you've solved the problems along the way, people are asking you, where do I sign? Oh, how do we do this, Darren? Where do you got the paperwork ready? Because I've never sold.
Yep. I say all the time, sales is serving people.
Hmm.
And if you do that,
Right.
you will never sell.
Yeah.
And especially if you get really good at telling your stories and
Yeah.
you're excited about
Right.
what you're doing and you just tell a story, all of a sudden somebody's like, I want that, because they're not getting that from their agent or whatever industry it is that you do. They're not getting that from their person.
Right. And my whole, even that, go back to that first meeting where I panicked. I thought, this is not for me. I'm not a suit and tie guy. I'm not a salesperson. What am I doing? Maybe my family was right. Maybe I belong in the factory because I'm not your typical salesperson. And even today, I don't feel like a salesperson. I don't feel like that. I feel, different from everybody else in that manner. But then I think back and go, well, you had an extremely successful career. And so I guess I did something right along the way.
Well, and that's a perfect segue, because like I really want to set that backdrop and get everybody to understand that you're just like everybody else that's got into sales, and you didn't just get in it and all of a sudden you're so successful and you notice this is the thing for me. I'm the fast talking guy. You had to go through a process and learn, and that didn't just even happen overnight. That was over the course of your career and what you were able to develop. And I love now where you're at the point where you said, I don't even want to do this because I thought to do this. You're being pulled because other people that you've impacted, and you didn't even know it through this process, other people that you've impacted and have come up to you and said, you need to get what you're doing and your system and the way you see the world out there.
Right. Yeah, for me, it was one piece at a time. So when I first came into real estate, I knew nothing about sales. I wasn't a good communicator. I didn't know how to listen to people. I didn't know how to ask questions. I didn't know any of this stuff. And it was just one piece at a time. And my old mentor said the team that I was on sent me to all this education. So I was reading books, listening to tapes, top speakers, top mentors, going to, top teams across the country. And my mentor always said, listen for the one thing that resonates with you at the time, right? It's like trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant. Just listen for the one thing that can help you at the moment and start, building it in pieces. And it took a little bit of time to put those pieces together, and education and learning never stops. Here I'm,
Yep.
60, been at this for 35 years. I still learn. And the older I get, the more I realize that I don't know and the more I have to learn. So the learning process never stops. I mean, technology changes, and even society changes a little bit. So, like, we're in a backward society right now that, when I first started off in the real estate business, is that, like, when you spoke the truth and facts about something, people appreciated it. In today's world, you speak the truth and facts about something and people push back on you. Like, people are not trusting and everything's so backwards. What's good is bad and what's bad is good. So we live in a backwards society right now, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of got to handle it that way. So if you're brutally honest and truthful, you're going to probably get some pushback because one, people may not trust you, and the biggest thing is people don't want to hear the truth anymore.
It's true. Yeah. I always say that the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off.
Right. Yeah.
And I've had some people that have pissed off for years, and then they've come back and
Right.
said,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
it really kicked my ass, you
Yeah.
know?
You
So tell me about the consistent agent and what you're getting out there, because, and again, emphasizing, joking around about the guys like, I don't get it, you're in your pajamas, or the guy at the awards banquet and saying like, how I'm working just as hard as you. Why are you more? I don't get why you're more successful. And you talk about all those just little inches that you're taking. How have you formulated this now to help other people? Because it's so badly needed. And this is needed across not just real estate. But you mentioned at the beginning how there's so many people that get into real estate. And yes, there are the successful top end people, just like in any industry, but there are so many people that are struggling to really figure it out. And there could be people, not because they're not working hard, like that gentleman that had made that comment that time. It wasn't that he wasn't working hard, he just wasn't working hard the right way. And
Right.
so how are you now getting that out to people?
Well, in 2012, I was asked to coach, train, and mentor at the company I was at, and I had to put some thought into it. So I started thinking about what am I going to coach, mentor, and train on? Because why are they asking me? Because it was the consistency why they came to me. And as I started putting it together, I had realized working it backwards that I did all these things in a formula. It was a very structured way, not realizing through my career that it was very structured, but it was just in my brain that how I did things. They were habits. So it turns out to be that the consistent agent is 4 habits, 5 strategies, and kind of a way I set goals. So that's kind of what the consistent agent is now. So I don't know. Could probably cut
Yeah.
that out. I don't know how to approach that a little bit better.
Yeah. So, when you started working with the agents in the training, what was like, I love that because it's really being self-aware, because a lot of times in sales, we're just going and we're doing these things. We don't realize that we've created a process or a formula, these habits that you're doing consistently every time until you can come outside of yourself. I didn't realize until I got into a leadership position what I was doing that made me successful. And even when I got in that leadership position, I didn't get it. I was like drinking from the water hose trying to figure it out. And I didn't think I was meant to be a sales leader. And then one day everything kind of dawned on me, and it was incredibly empowering for me to like, yeah, I can be successful, but now it's taking people that are really struggling and don't think they're good salespeople or don't think this is for them, and then and showing them these habits and this process and this system that they can be successful. It
Right.
changes their life.
Yeah. So when I was first asked to coach and mentor this group of people, there was some experienced agents, probably been in the business the same amount of time that I have. And as I started into it, I had realized that these people are not doing the things that I do. And when I was talking about some of the things that I do, they were writing it down and they were just in awe of, oh my gosh, you do that. I'm like, how could you be a consistent agent and build your business if you didn't do these things where I was at? But what happened is in 2012, I kind of went back and was working with this group of people, and I had realized that I do a lot of things differently than they do. And I got thinking to myself, this is why you're successful. And it kind of became a joke in my office too. Like the Darren spin, it was like we'd always say, that's why they do what they do, and that's why we do what we do, is because we do things differently. But what happened was I did this for about 6 months, and then I'd have another meeting, and we'd have kind of assignments and nobody did anything. And I got frustrated. So I quit and I stopped and said, I'll never coach or train again because, I pour my heart and soul into these people just like I do clients and
Mm.
everything else. I
Yeah.
give everything I got and nobody's doing anything. I didn't know if it was because they didn't understand what I was saying. I didn't know if they were just set in their ways, if they were lazy, if they didn't want to grow. Because some people just don't want to grow. They like the information, but don't want to do the
Yep.
work.
Yep.
So it wasn't until now that I've decided that I'm going to give everything I got to people. They can take and run with it. They can take a little piece of it, build on what they got or not. And I've learned that now that I'm just going to give what I got and people can take for what it is versus before, over 10 years ago of getting upset because people weren't doing the things that I know worked for me. So I've kind of grown in that aspect, and that's why I'm more engaged into the consistent agent now.
Well, and I love how it comes full circle too, because it goes back to you being in that guy's living room talking about the wedge, and you're like, whatever, I'm not going to do that. I don't even know what
Right.
he's talking about. In some people maybe and I've sort of come across many people that crossroads really they're just not ready to work that hard. They just don't get it. Like you're like Charlie Brown's teacher, like they're like wah wah wah, what's he saying? And then one day, hopefully, like they're talking on the phone, they're like, oh, that's
Right.
that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, and now that I guess I'm more mature, grown from back then when I was teaching and coaching and mentoring, that people are at different places, people have different motivations, people have different backgrounds, and the thing is, because I have what works for me and worked in my business, and then other people have their way of being successful, but maybe it's one little tiny half of a piece of something I have that you know, two times, three times, five times stuff that they're doing. So a little piece of what I have they might be able to build upon what I have. So I have learned to understand that just because I have this formula, you can't take this formula and give it to somebody else and it works exactly the same because different makeups. But it's little pieces of it that may work. So if you get an understanding of everything that I'm doing, and one thing that I learned to do, and I got a habit of doing this, is early on is I would always listen with intention. So no matter where I was at, if I was in a meeting, if I was at dinner, if I was out with friends, I always learned to take from things I like in people, things that's causing them to be successful. So I've always had my antennas up, always. It's running 24/7, it never stops. That I'm always picking up, like, oh, I like the way he did that. Boom, it comes in, it's forever
Yep.
that I'm doing that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it's just the opposite. So I'll be out with somebody and they act in a way, and I take note of it and go, oh my gosh, I will never do that. I don't want ever people looking at me that way because of the way they were acting and behaving. And so this person taught me a lesson from across the room that never even
They don't
knew
even
it,
know.
right? Because I'm a sponge for knowledge, and it's a habit that's developed inside of me, and I can't shut it off. That I just keep learning from everything. Even now today, I pick up on something like, oh yeah, I like that,
It's so cool because we think that everybody does this, and they don't. And that's even how this whole podcast formulated. Is I was going out, I want to pick the brains of people that were doing the things that I wanted to do. I was
Mm-hmm.
meeting other coaches and consultants and other entrepreneurs who are building great businesses and great cultures, or I saw as great leaders, and I was inviting them to coffee and just going and picking their brain. And then as through the process, I'm realizing they're telling me these amazing stories that I'm blown away. I'm like, oh my God, how'd you overcome that? And then they're
Mm-hmm.
like really getting into it. I'm like, you need to share. I can't believe nobody knows that story. They're like, yeah, how do I share that? And it's like, so I bought a GoPro. I'd be like, if I was having a killer conversation in a coffee shop, I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I pull out the GoPro? We'll have some conversation. I'll make some clips. We'll tag you in,
Right.
that kind of thing. But it's like, it's just realizing while you're in the action, what's
Right.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's what I just got in a habit of just listening to everything around me that's going on and just constantly extracting and pulling in what I like and
Yeah.
blocking out what I don't. And, I guess it's the same with people is I've always been, um, I always took note of people and I always pulled the people closer that I like and learn from, grow from, laugh with, and then the people that are not necessarily narcissists, but people that just didn't fit in my box, I just kind of kept the distance. It sounds kind of shrewd, but it's just something you're going to have to do. And even with clients in the real estate business, you may have a client that is not the healthiest mentally for you, and you have to wrap yourself from it and still continue on and do your best with that client
Yep.
and still provide and do the things you do, but also too at the same time you have to learn to um, have necessary endings. So sometimes it can be healthy if you're in a client to cut it off, because again, I talk about being consistent in the real estate business, and it sounds counterproductive, but sometimes not taking a client or ending a relationship with a client will free that energy up, because sometimes that will suck the energy
Every
out of
time.
you.
Yep.
And so by sometimes ending those relationships will refuel your tank, and then it gives you energy for the other people. So that's something I've kind of learned along the way, to have consistency in my business, and to again always know where my paycheck is coming from by ending things too, necessary endings, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. Well, and it's going back and being that problem solver, and like I talked about, like having those conversations, or you going out and you constantly learning and implementing and putting into action. And that is rare. That's less than 1% of people are going out there and doing that. And again, I started this podcast because I've realized that people are going and starting businesses, and then they're not going and having these conversations that I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
I'm meeting other entrepreneurs that are stuck, and they think they're the only ones that have ever come across this situation, and they're like, poor me. And I'm like, dude, I met a guy yesterday that went through that same exact situation. This is what he did. Like, and so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put this on a podcast, because
Mm-hmm.
like I'm going out and having those conversations. I'm going to put it out there so other people can choose if they want to listen and hear the same stories that I'm hearing, because I'm becoming better by doing this. I'm learning. I'm taking what they're doing and I'm putting into action. I'm becoming a better business owner. I'm becoming a better husband, a better father. I'm becoming a
Right.
better person. And so, if anybody else is listening to these stories that are data with soul, if anybody else is listening to it, what can they get out of it?
Right.
And it's the same thing. We're at this point, and we have this collective knowledge, and sometimes we think it's just common knowledge or common sense, but then it's the realization that common sense is not that common, and that there are so many people struggling. And again, you told me a story about going to a funeral, and do you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. So I'm at this funeral, and this I hear my name being yelled from across the room, and charges in and said, "Darrin, Darrin, Darrin, you taught me something, years ago." It was during that 2012, and this was, 10 years later. And she says, "You changed my life. You taught me something." And I'm thinking to myself, "What did I teach you?" And she said, "You taught me that you don't always have to respond to everything. You can acknowledge and move on." And she said, "It changed my life because I didn't get so responsive to every single thing, that when emotions are running high with clients, that I'm responding and reacting like a pinball. And you told me that, you don't necessarily have to respond to everything. You can acknowledge and move on." So,
It is awesome. So tell me about what you've developed. 'Cause I know you've put all this stuff together to where you can now help people that are like, I want to go to I want to be consistent. Uh, because, and I guess we haven't really talked about it. We were talking about it beforehand, but just some of the experiences you got to experience in life through your consistency.
um, I guess,
So, how are you, you've rolled out this system, or you have, how are you now helping people? You've got this consistent agent and the platform. How are you now rolling this out? How can people get that coaching, or how can people go to that next level?
well, so I'm still early in the process of this, because it wasn't my decision necessarily to coach, train, mentor. It was people coming to me, saying that, you need to come forward with this, and you need to help people because, you're so good at like helping people. You take the time with people. And I heard somebody say something just recently, that with the like specialized knowledge, they felt it was their duty and felt it was a responsibility owed back to share with others. So I thought about that too. And so, we're putting together a coaching program. I'm creating video trainings, and I'm in a company that I'm training at. So you could could come over to the company I'm at and you can join in
You
the
can join
training.
in.
So I don't know if I'm answering that.
Yeah. So at one point they'll be out where they can somebody else can take it or go through the program itself.
Yeah. So we're again, we're at the very beginning stages of stitching a program together. And it's like anything else when you start up, you just kind of have to stick it out there and let it be guided by what the demands are, what people are really, faced with. And so what one thing that I'm offering right now is to start up is like the first 50 people, I'm doing a free one-on-one call with them, and it's not a sales call. So the people that are working with me on this, I've made it very clear that there will not be one sales pitch. There will not be one word of sales spoken, because sometimes you get something free and then you have to sit there for a half of it and listen to a sales pitch, and the other half of it's a bunch of BS.
Yep.
This is going to be hardcore 1 hour one-on-one. That maybe just this free call. Maybe I may give you a fire hydrant full, trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant, that, I'll help you note through the pieces that can help you in your business, because we're going to peel the layers back, kind of what your experience level are, how long you've been in business, where your weak spots are, where you want to grow, where you want to head. I mean, do you want to build a team? Do you want to be a solo agent? I mean, where are you at in your business? Let's find an avenue for you that you can take a couple things from my program, apply it to yours, and, see if it can help grow your business. And maybe in the future you want to come back for more mentoring and training, or if you want to join, it doesn't matter. But what's important is this hour is going to be a power hour for you.
That's huge. And again, it's just going back to everything that we talked about, and like you're going out and you're serving people. And, for people that, again, to go to that next level, what can they do with that call? And again, it ties back home to people want to be led. I've done the same exact thing where it's not a sales pitch but I'll meet with somebody for an hour and give them all this stuff, and they can take it and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast, you can take it and run with it. And here's the video, and go and do whatever you want with it. Clip it up like it's yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, there are people that are like, oh, what do I do with all this content? I don't know
Right.
the first thing to do with it. And so then I saw that problem, and I turned it around and said, here, I can help you solve that problem. I see I see this, and I can get this to you in this,
Yeah.
And it helps them take what they've learned and have somebody helping them, guiding them, that's been there. That's been there. You've walked in those shoes. You've been through those experiences, good, bad, and indifferent. And it's so easy to say, oh, just call the client with bad news. But it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot easier to do when you have somebody that's been there, that's been through it, and has done it successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we're trying to create is, if the free call, if you wanted to join in, what we'll do, we'll break it down into pieces, right? So what I want to do, the way we're building this training course, is to take my core program, break it down into pieces, and if it's a one-on-one, we'll kind of take that part of the program that you're interested in, that maybe you want to take that and make it your own, and then week by week or every 2 weeks or however we set it up, is to really dive down and peel the layers back and have accountability, and figure out how to apply it to your situation. And even the coaches have coaches, and if you study successful people, is the higher up the ladder you go, the billionaires, they have multiple coaches.
Yep.
And so that's one thing for me, is I have coaches.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the coaches get coached. It's just layering that information forward to take and being able to apply the things that you learn, because everybody learns differently. And if you're not learning it the way we're saying it, maybe we can figure out to say it in a different way so you can apply it. And because the biggest thing is to get results from what we're teaching, to be able to build your business, not just a bunch of words that are spoken that sounds good, but actually real live hardcore information that you can benefit from.
Darren, that's phenomenal. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I think it's a great mic drop moment. And again, it goes down to the people to have that support and to be led and to have somebody that's been through those shoes and those experiences that you have. And we've went through it like collecting, like you've been a student and now you've been for your whole life and continuing and building it to where you can now turnkey and help people get to where get that consistency.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I think moving forward, because I've had a successful career in real estate, and I think as we get older, things shift, and now my passion and desire is to see other people succeed. So sometimes things are not always about money. So my drive would be to see somebody grow, benefit from what I do, and them have a successful career and carry through and being able to take care of their family and do the things with their family and have the life that I've had
Yep.
because my priority was just to have fun, raise my family, be with my friends, and do cool stuff. I've done that. And so now I want to pay that forward by helping other people. And my dream, because life is harder today than it was yesterday, and it may continue to get harder.
Yep.
So, like for like my kids and for people that I work with, I want to see them have the experiences that I was able to have that maybe they're thinking that it might be an impossibility. Well, let's find a way that can make those things possible, right? That's my goal is to help people find a path and avenue to not just work or be better at their work, but enjoy life, to enjoy the little things, to have little successes, to, maybe they want a new car, maybe they want to go on a trip, maybe they want to do something with their kids, to find an avenue that puts structures and habits and everything in place to provide all that stuff to make it become reality.
Phenomenal. Darren, this has been awesome. Like, this is awesome. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming down.
right on.